Hello, everyone. If I can have you take a seat, we're going to settle into the meeting. If you can take a seat. Hi, again, if we can just have some decorum because we're about to begin and everyone can take a seat, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank everybody on this panel for staying late and coming out and helping bring this information to the public. I know there's been some misinformation going around and there's been a lot of questions. So I'm very excited to have Alex Pratt with the OSPCD, as well as Deb Burke with the OSPCD. Sorry, I can't turn my head and talk into the mic. Dan Grover, our treasurer, Jim Parker from Nangle Associates, and Rachel Running from the CPC to talk about the project at hand, where we sit with Roosevelt as of right now, and what's going on, what the steps are we're taking at the present. So with that being said, I will let it start with Alex Pratt. Oh, I will just say for those watching at home and who want to participate at the end of the introductions, we will have a question and answer section. Just go ahead and raise your hand on the screen and Elena will unraise your hand and invite you to go ahead and speak and ask your question so everybody can participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and hello, everyone. My name is Alex Pratt. I'm the Deputy Director of Housing and Community Development in the city's Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development, and I work with all of my colleagues up here and many of you on this project. So as most of you know, and I won't cover all the history, but just talking about this project, as most of you know, the previous project for Roosevelt Park was canceled in April of this year due to costs. And so since that time, we've been focusing on answering two questions. One, what do we need to do to take down the fence around this, what we call the imminent hazard area in that one corner of Roosevelt Park, and make that area safe and restored for people to be able to use? And two, are there any other regulatory requirements that we need to meet regarding Roosevelt Park? The mayor laid out at the end of October a pretty extensive memo, which was supported by our environmental consultants and background data and research and all of that. So we'll be getting into that tonight a little bit. We've got our consultant, Jim Parker here from Nangle Associates. He's our environmental scientist here, our licensed site professional. He knows all the details and can get real into the weeds on that one. But really what we want to talk tonight about is how we're going to go about taking that fence down and restoring the area. So we did get a cost estimate from our civil engineer, who believes that the probable cost, and we know that these conditions change, but the likely cost of this project is somewhere around $850,000. So since that time, we've been looking at what funds might be available, and I know my colleague Dan Grover, the treasurer, can speak to the funding sources. But one thing I want to emphasize is that all of the information about this project, including these estimates, these memos, and then future meetings, recording of this meeting, and plans as they unfold, will be available online on the City of Malden's website, specifically cityofmalden.org/Roosevelt. This is the same project page, the same link that we've been using for this project for a number of years now. So all of that information will be there for members of the public to be able to read, to learn where we are in the process. And then the other thing I'll say is, as we get further along in the plans, there will be additional meetings through what we call our PIP process, which is our Public Involvement Plan process. And I know Jim will speak more about that process later, but yeah, we're really trying to put all the information out there because we know there are a lot of people in this community who are passionate about this park, who have questions about this park, and who want to know what we're doing. So all that information is available online. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my boss, our OSPCD director, Deb Burke.
Good evening. I really don't have too much data at this point. Probably will be speaking as the meeting goes on, but just to reiterate what Councilor Taylor said and what my colleague Alex said, the main focus of tonight's meeting is to talk through the memos that address soil remediation at the park, So it's dealing with the stuff inside the fence and also talking through Jim Parker in terms of his risk analysis that he did across the park that has resulted in just a soil remediation action just needing to be taken within the confines of the fence. So that's, I'll weigh in probably later, but that's all I have at the moment.
I'm going to go ahead and ask Jim Parker, just hit the button on your mic and I'll be able to turn it on.
All right. My name is Jim Parker from Nangle Consulting Associates. We've done the assessment. We were involved in the initial assessment for the proposed construction. And so we've been involved since 2019. Once we were told that the project wasn't going to move forward, we looked at what the requirements were. This site, when we did the initial assessment for construction, we found indications of ash and fill across site, which is a fairly common occurrence in urban areas. But we found one area where the levels in shallow soil were a little higher than the surrounding areas, and they triggered what's called an imminent hazard. It required us to notify DEP. We notified DEP. We put the fence up, and so the strategy at that point was, well, we'll fence it off, and then we'll incorporate resolving this into the proposed construction plan. So that's been through a few iterations. We've done more sampling out there, but now moving forward, and I should back up, when we first identified this, and within 1 year we had to determine whether or not we could close the site or we had to keep it open. And we got to what's called a temporary solution. We could have closed the site off if it wasn't for what was inside the fenced-in area because of those higher levels in shallow soil. So an action needed to be taken. So now we're looking at what needs to be done. We did look at the data again across the site. Essentially what we found is that the soil within the fenced-in area, if we remove that material, will be below the applicable standards for the imminent hazard condition. And for us to close off the site, that's what would need to be done. So the concept is that we would restore the area within the fenced-in area back to the way it was. And that would involve removing about 1.5 feet of material and putting a geotextile fabric underneath that. We're not changing the grades, we're not adding drainage, we're just basically replacing what was there, but putting in a 1.5 foot cap that will eliminate that exposure, allow us to remove the fence, and then we'll be able to achieve what's called a permanent solution of the MCP. So this site, because it's a public involvement plan site, anytime we do anything like that, we've got to prepare a draft plan, we circulate it to the public, we have a meeting and allow for comments over a certain time period, and all that has to happen before we can actually implement that project. It was similar to what was done when we developed the PIP plan, same process. We have to send out notices to everyone. We put a notice in the paper, it's a public meeting. So that process has to be gone through with the details about what's going to be implemented out there. And until we do that, we really can't, I guess schedule wise, we're trying to do this as quickly as possible, but until that PIP process is done and we know what's involved, it's hard to forecast the schedule. And also, there will be a Conservation Commission process in this as well, because we've got to make either a modification or new filing to deal with the change in scope. So I think that's it.
And at this point, I will invite Rachel Running, who is the chair. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan first, and I wrote that down. I apologize, Dan.
That's all right.
I'll ask Dan to put his microphone on, and we'll go to our treasurer, Dan Grover.
All right. Thank you, Counselor. My name is Dan Grover. I'm the treasurer for the City of Malden. Welcome, everyone. Happy to be here. So I'm just here to discuss the 5 initial funding sources that were primarily slated to fund the Roosevelt Park, the initial Roosevelt Park project that has subsequently been canceled. I'll go through each one individually, and then, like Councilor Taylor had indicated, we can go to Rachel and then go for questions from there. So the first funding source that we had was the Adelaide Breed Baird Foundation grant. That was in the amount of $660,000. That grant was specific to turf. So as a result of the initial project being canceled and no turf field going through, Baird has withdrawn that funding commitment, so that $660,000 is no longer available. The next funding source that I'll talk about is the free cash appropriation of $1.3 million. That was appropriated for additional costs above and beyond the original scope of the project that was prior to the final bids that we received. Unfortunately, those funds, as you are aware, were not enough to cover the overall project. That free cash appropriation of $1.3 million is still available within the city general funds, but in order to be utilized for any project, they would have to be reappropriated by the city council. So technically, they're not available for any specific project at this time without a reappropriation. The HUD Section 108 loan, $1.2 million. Those funds have yet to be drawn down. They are still with the federal government. With a slight change to the project, we had a conversation with HUD today. They will require some notification from us as far as what those specific changes to the project are. Because the original project was canceled, they did consider it a modification. And we believe, well, we would require the city council to reappropriate that, reauthorize that appropriation or approval to borrow those funds for HUD, from HUD for any project that goes forward, presumably the soil remediation. So those funds are still with the federal government. They're not in the city's bank account or anything like that. The other two pieces are bonds. The city general bond of $1.2 million, specifically for soil remediation above and beyond the 18 inches to go down to additional up to 3 feet. Once again, that was specifically tied to the original project. In order to utilize those funds, which are sitting in the city's bank account, they have not been dispersed other than roughly $160,000 for initial expenses related to the park. Those funds would have to be reappropriated by the city council to then be used for any subsequent project, whether it be soil remediation or a completely new project which has yet to be developed. That brings me to the CPC bond of $1.45 million. Those funds are sitting in the CPC bank account. Those funds have not been spent in any manner. And once again, those were originally authorized through the appropriation and from the city council with the guidance from the CPC for the original project. In order to utilize those funds, again, we would need the city council to authorize through a vote, a majority vote for both the CPC and the city bond, a super majority, well, 2/3 majority technically, in order to reallocate those funds. So as far as funds that are available for any particular project at this time, there is no project, so technically there are no funds available. The funds that were borrowed in the CPC and the general city bond fund are sitting in the city's bank account. The free cash appropriation is still allocated and available for reappropriation. Those funds have not been spent. And I'll just reiterate, the 108 loan of $1.2 million that is available has not been drawn down, and those funds are not in the bank, and they have not been dispersed. I believe that covers all the finances.
Thank you, Dan. And we will go to Rachel running for the CPC. Yep.
All right. I'm Rachel Running. I'm the current chair of the Community Preservation Committee. So Dan just spoke a little bit to the details I was going to go into. But back in 2019, we approved 2 projects for Roosevelt Park. The first was a $250,000 grant, kind of study grant, that was spent by Shadley Associates in the full amount for the design work. Oh, okay. This was actually before my time, so my notes are off. What was it, Hannah Swenson? Yeah. Okay, Hannah Swenson, thank you. And then the second was this bond that Dan just mentioned, which was 1.45 million, and is a bond against our future revenue. So just to give a little bit of context to, I think most of you know the CPC has a tax, a 1% tax in the city. So we receive revenues each year that are in a dedicated fund. So basically, we were borrowing against those future funds. So in 2023, in August, so about a year ago, the city issued the Roosevelt Park project bond, and we do have that money in a reserve account. So part of the kind of timing of that was some of the stipulations we had on that as a CPC about the interest rates that we would be willing to pay. So we required the 4.25% interest rate or lower. So the city went out for those at a time when they felt they'd be able to get it before rates were higher. So our obligation for that is through June of 2034. Our payments started already to repay that. And then, as you know, in April, the mayor announced that the project wouldn't be going forward. So we're kind of in a unique situation at this point. The CPC discussed at several of our meetings, kind of discussed the state of affairs and decided that, you know, we want to be able to work with the city. We want to be able to work with community to come up with a good solution. We have these funds, but there is no project. So anything that would come before us would have to be a new project that would be approved by the CPC in conjunction with the city, OSBCD, and all parties. So, you know, there were some big question marks, but we definitely are, you know, in favor of coming to a good solution, and we do have some of these resources that we can reallocate.
Thank you. So before I go to questions from the audience, both online and in person, is there anything else anybody up here wanted to add, or just from hearing one of them? Just wanted to make sure. No. Okay. So I think the best way to probably do this, in all fairness, with getting both the questions answered from folks online as well as folks in the audience, is anybody who would like to ask a question that is in the audience, please come up and get in line at the podium. And then anybody online can raise their hand, and we'll go back and forth. We'll invite somebody from the in-person audience to ask a question, and then we'll go to somebody online, and that way we can keep it flowing as easily as possible. So I invite anybody in the room who would like to ask a question to go ahead and line up at the podium. And anybody online to please raise your hand. Yep. Oh, one moment. I'm going to turn your mic on if you can just state your name and your address for the record. There you go.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Alberto, 409 Bryant Street. So I have a question about the, sounds like the plan right now is to remediate the lead, but not to do anything with the entire park. And I'm just wondering, I have a few questions regarding that. My first question is there a plan? The second question is, when is that going to be, when are we going to start talking about that? And my third question is that I remember a few years ago, we have this email from Joe Levine to Deb Burke about the stakeholders, and these people were mentioned: Charlie Conifrey, Jim Cahill, Helen Kipnis, Ken Antonucci, and Steve Frecker. And then Joe Levine says, "This is your largest group of people who would benefit from this project. I think you have covered them all." So we've been over this before. We know that this was a major oversight and that key stakeholders were not included. So I want to know who, if the office, I can't remember the name, OSP something, if you guys have identified key stakeholders in the next go around that we're going to do this project, and when we get to start having input about the design.
I can take some of that question. That email that you referenced, the people based on the names you just read to me, I don't recall that particular email, were sports groups within the city. They were just one facet of stakeholders that we had reached out over 4 or 5 years of community engagement. We had done flyers through the schools at the Salemwood School a couple of times, translated into different languages. We continue to keep that page up to date on the City of Malden's website. We stayed in touch with the principal of the Salemwood School. We reached out to all the neighbors. All the abutters to the project are getting ongoing mailings from Jim Parker from Nangle and Associates, because this is in that PIP DEP process, as was previously stated. We held a pretty robust community meeting on the 108 loan environmental review process in September of 22. There were 100 people, 80 to 100 people in this room that came here not only because of online advertising, but direct email advertising from a list of stakeholders that my office over time has generated. So I think the city engaged everybody. Those same folks will be engaged when and if a new project comes to mind. Right now, it's just the soil remediation.
Okay, can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure, excuse me.
Why is it different for Roosevelt Park than all the other community parks?
Specifically,
Like Dever, Trafton, Kierstead, they all had community, like the community, like the budding neighbors of Trafton got to help design Trafton. And they had different, like they had like 3 meetings about that.
So I can actually answer that. So being that it's been less than a year that I've been in this position, this is absolutely something that, as I know, I've spoken with Friends of Roosevelt previously and other groups. One of my first things in office was to reach out to Principal Van and make sure that the students and their needs were being listened to, and we were listening to everybody. And those meetings will start. This project isn't going to be different. There is going to be community input, but I do feel like there's a lot of mistrust within the community, and that's something that we've really had to work past to be able to get to the point. In those areas, there was a lot of community input where it was a very symbiotic trust relationship and was very easy to get things moving forward. And I think we need to work on building that here. I think we are working on building that. Plans like this, several acres of land, is not something, there's a lot to consider when we're looking at Roosevelt. There's the flooding, there's the state of the building and how the flooding is affecting that. There's environmental factors, there's the funding factors, there's the funding, what funding is going to look like in the next year. And these are all things that I am taking very seriously, learning a lot about, reaching out, getting information, so that when we do want to put forth a plan, we have a structure and we have something that we all work on and we are all proud of, and this city is happy to put forth together. And that's the goal of starting these meetings. It's the reason I've been doing a ton of research into other ways that we can bring this together. I want to include the sports groups because I think it's great for kids to play soccer. I'd love for them to play it on grass. I'd like to see other things that we can do at the park. We can easily do this together, but it's going to take really dispelling misinformation and really sitting down and talking to each other in a way that we can move forward.
Sorry, if you're online, I just wanted to reiterate that if you want to raise your hand, there's a button on the top of your screen that says raise hand. And if you're on a mobile device, it's under the option reaction, and then there's a raised hand option there.
The podium is on. If you can go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
My name is John Saya from 37 Pierce Street in Malden, Massachusetts. So my first question, when the project for Roosevelt Park came to the public in 2019, we were told that grass was too expensive and that the excavation had to go to a depth of 3 feet. So could someone explain why the depth is now acceptable at 1.5 feet instead of 3 feet, and when that changed? And also, Jim Parker, I remember you said a while back, because I spoke to you over the phone through the PIP process, that sometime before the project was canceled, that Angle had investigated remediating just the fenced-off area. So I think this is something, so as this is coming out, I believe it's something that Angle has already done. So I was just wondering how the go-around this time, how the plan differs from what you guys had done around maybe 2020 or so.
Okay, sure. So the 3-foot thing, the conventional wisdom in capping is 3 feet. And when you look at risk, you look at 0 to 3. There have been some changes. There's also a lot of variation in terms of caps that you can use, and it depends on the situation. And, you know, there's a whole host of things. One of them, which at Roosevelt, is that it's historic fill, and that there are other designations for historic fill. But when you've got a site where you're looking at, you would look at 0 to 3 feet. When you're constructing, there are some options sometimes for doing different things. There have been some changes in terms of DEP is getting more involved in capping now. And recently, they've actually been specifying a particular type of product that allow you to use less soil. So it is an evolving thing. It's also evolving how we look at risk. There have been changes over time. And so what we have to do is continue to look at these things to ensure that we're meeting the requirements of the mass contingency plan. So in terms of why we're looking at 1.5 feet, so the issue that's requiring that fence is that there's the levels of lead within the upper foot of soil. We actually went back and sampled right where those locations were, and there wasn't really anything significant in the upper 6 inches. So, you know, we were there's no direct exposure, but still, because we were in a foot, you have to, that's the thing that triggers that requirement, the imminent hazard situation. So we did go back. You're right, I remember our conversation. We did go back, because that was one of the thoughts is, hey, should we go and just resolve this issue? Because then we can remove the fence. And the thinking was, well, we're going to redo the whole thing anyway. That's kind of it's going to be an extra step, an extra cost. We did go to delineate that, right? Because when we collect these samples, we were on a grid based on, we were trying to figure out how to dispose of all this material, because it's a decent volume of material. And so we were on this grid, and we take composite samples. We have sort of this protocol. When something exceeds, we go back and we look at that. If something in a deeper sample exceeds, we go back and look at that shallow. And that's how we found those 2 locations. So then we actually came around them, and we did sort of develop a plan. Problem now is that to go back and do that, you have to restore that portion. It's so overgrown, so you've got to remove the weeds, and you've got to restore it so that's a playable surface. And so to do that, you're going to disturb quite a bit of that. And you disturb all that, and you will, there's a chance that deeper stuff as you do that will come to the surface. And so, I mean, there are ways we could maybe sort of reassess that after that's been removed. What we don't want to have happen is we go and remove that. We have to restore those areas anyway. We have to remove the soil anyway to restore the surfaces, and then find out, well, we do have a problem over here down a foot. So the idea is you're restoring it anyway, remove that. It's actually, we're proposing to go to 1.5 feet and put a geotextile, which will address that imminent hazard condition. We'll know for certain that it doesn't exist because we put that in. We have grade issues there because of the floodplain, so we have to maintain the same grade. And that'll allow us to close out the site with DEP.
So does that mean that the minimum requirement for grass in the field would be significantly less now, right, with 18 inches versus 3 feet?
So you're going to have, we're putting back what was there. It's not really, I don't know that you're going to get back what you had, which is the same situation you have across the rest of the field, right? And how that functions, it's probably not ideal. What it does is it addresses the imminent hazard condition, allows us to remove the fence. But you're not going to have you'll likely have the same maintenance issues you do with the rest of the field because it's going to be the same composition.
Well, I was just thinking, in 2019, though, we were told that we couldn't have grass with an 18-inch depth excavation. We were told that it had to be 3 feet.
I don't
I
know.
just wasn't sure when that changed.
I don't
when
know.
that
I can
changed.
tell you that so what this is called is a direct contact barrier, right? And it's all about having a sufficient barrier. And there are 2 barriers under the state regulations. One's called the engineered barrier, one's called a direct contact barrier. Engineered barrier, there's draft guidance that sort of outlines, and it essentially follows landfill guidance for a cap. Direct contact barrier is sort of this concept that while 3 feet of soil is a reasonable barrier, but you can use geotextiles, and in the original case of this project, it had a geotextile on the surface and down below. So you can use a combination of those, and it has a similar level of protection, particularly in an area where you can control the land use. So in this case, this site would have what's called a land use restriction on it when you're done, if you put that barrier, and you would be able to restrict access. So there are all different sort of options, but to deal with what we're dealing with right now, to remove that fence, I mean, you could remove as much soil as you want. You're probably not going to reduce the risk. I mean, in reality, you're not going to reduce the risk. It's going to be the same.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going over that because I'm guessing information might help when it comes to the council, because it's my understanding that when they agreed to pay for for the extra money to go to 3 feet across the entire field, I believe that some of the councilors, at least some councilors, believed that it was at least required to go down 3 feet in the fenced-off area. But that's not the case.
I should be careful. There are other things to consider, right? There's the drainage and all that. There were components, I think, in that were different than all we're doing is we're basically replacing it with what is there, just clean material and a cap. You're not creating something that you think is going to, stand up for 30 or 40 years. It's probably going to get used the same way as the rest of the field. And it's going to wear the same way as the existing field. But that's again, I think if you went down and you remove that now, again, you don't need to do it to get the site closed, but you may preclude your options down the road because you may need to do some drainage stuff if you have a bigger plan that you need to look at other things. I think, the grade issue out there and drainage are 2 big things out there in terms of designing the whole field, right, that you need to incorporate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and I just had one other question. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about misinformation. Friends of Roosevelt Park has worked very hard to try to have as accurate information as possible. They've done their best to reach out to as many people within the city to maintain communication as possible. And we haven't received any real feedback in terms of what information is inaccurate on our end, what we need to work on. I just think the most honest way to address misinformation is with accurate information. And I would just like to see more of that. So, Councilor Taylor, if you could just elaborate on what that misinformation is in the future, I think that would really help out the public who's trying to figure out what's going on. Thank you.
I would be happy to do that in the future. And I think the reason that we're putting together a meeting like this and we took the time to get everybody here to speak is to be able to dispel that information. So it's coming straight from the sources. It's not getting filtered through me. It's not getting filtered through anybody else. Right now you have everybody who's working on this in their specialty, and this is what they do. So that is the best way I felt to put out correct information. And I will go to the podium and state your name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, my name is Annabette Donchamont. I'm at 16 Preston Street. I first want to thank you, Ari, for really connecting with the community and hearing out us. As a Salemwood parent, I don't always agree with some of the groups in Malden, and I really like that you are hearing both sides of what people want. As a member of the sports groups, I really appreciate the fact that you do take into consideration that we really want to just get these kids out and playing. And I also do have one question, though, and it's a little related to the project. When this project was getting planned originally, there was conversation going on about the plaza area that is slowly going downward and causing a lot of uneven edges, which is really dangerous for the kids. My son actually face planted last year off of an edge. I'm curious to know if there's any sort of plan. I know Roosevelt doesn't have a plan, but is there anything we can do about that as a safety hazard, being that that is a really common area for a lot of our kids, including the most program to play. And a lot of those kids play soccer. And we really want to make sure that they're playing on safe grounds.
So I can, that is something that I've brought up. We've been in talks to see what we can do if that, we have to tie it into the whole Roosevelt project because of drainage issues. What exactly is causing that separation and what could work best? Oh, and Ron Hogan can go for it. I'm going to call him up because he can answer that as well.
Yeah, so good timing. Just, the mayor had asked that Hannah Swanson, Steve O'Neill, who I think some folks know as having been involved in this project, explore that exact issue and to provide options. And just yesterday, he had reached out with 3 different options that we've got to meet on and look at different ways to address that. You know, it varies from, you know, $500,000 to $1.5 million solution. And it's just a matter of kind of, to a lot of what Jim just spoke about, how much you want to manage the risk about it potentially settling. So I guess my message is that it's on the radar. We've now got options. We've got to figure out, he's given us an idea of both time frame and cost estimate, and we've just got to evaluate, you know, which one makes most sense to move forward with. So that is moving forward one way or the other. Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. And there's nobody online, correct? I'm not just, okay. Go ahead and come on up. Name and address for the record.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisette Alvarado, 492 Pleasant Street. I'm up here just to find out some clarification about, to Dan, right? So basically, between free cash, the HUD loan, and the city bond, we have $3.7 million available on hand, as long as it's reauthorized and reappropriated by the city council to go towards a project at Roosevelt Park. Is that correct?
So free cash, 1.3, the CPC, 1.45, and the city general bond, roughly, 1.2.
I wasn't including the CPC because that requires an additional application process, reapplication process through the CPC, correct?
All right, so if you look at the free cash, the HUD, and the city general bond fund, yes, 3.7. That is available to be reappropriated for purposes in which the city council, in conjunction with the mayor and OSPC, deem most appropriate. To say that it could be used for Roosevelt, potentially. Okay. Could it be used for another park, potentially?
Okay.
So I'm not going to say definitively that that money is available to Roosevelt. That is, subject to what projects we feel that we as the mayor and the city council feel most appropriate to use those funds.
And so I wanted to know, given that, why did the city not reapply for the project or recreate the project in the summertime, considering this has been going on for so many years already? You guys obviously know us, we know you, you guys know the ins and outs of Roosevelt Park so much that why wasn't this moved to immediately reapply just to decontaminate the park once the plastic turf project was canceled, is what I mean. Because now you've waited and now it's created an additional buffer where we all have to live through city council meetings again, where we have to talk about it with I know the councilors don't want to hear about it again. So, Deb, do you have?
I'm not sure if this is a direct answer, so I'll give it my best shot. When the project was canceled at the end of April, the decision was made, after another week or two, to bring back the LSP, which is Nangle and Associates,
Okay.
to give us a plan for how we could move forward on the most pressing piece, which was the soil remediation. And he could speak as to, how long that process took because there was additional testing that had to be done. And then there was this other new level or new layer of risk analysis. So, as soon as we got the report in terms of the soil remediation, I would say within a couple of days, that second announcement that went out in October with our plan was announced.
And I just have one final question. I'm a Ward 2 resident, so Dever Park's my backyard. And from a resident's point of view, it was communicated that once contaminated soil was founded on Devitt Park, especially where the playground was going to be placed, that it was an emergency that needed to be immediately remediated, and it was. And the question is, considering that Salem Woods School utilizes the entirety of Roosevelt Park on a daily basis, and children from grades 3 to 8 utilize that, why has OSPCD not also created that as a priority? Given that a larger space of it is utilized for children on a daily basis that are receiving a Malden public education.
Good question. It was prioritized. That's why the fence went up pretty much, you know, the day they found these levels of lead within that area. But I'm not an LSP, so I probably would want Mr. Parker to speak more of, and I think he stated it, that there is no risk across the rest of the field.
Does that mean that there's no lead, or there's acceptable levels of lead across the rest of Roosevelt Park?
There's lead everywhere.
There's lead everywhere,
right.
Yeah.
No, we're below the applicable standards. I can speak to Devitt Park in that, and maybe I'm wrong, but it was an emergency in that it was under construction when they encountered that, and that created a very complex problem for everybody. But they were in the middle of construction, so where they encountered that. So
yeah, so it had disturbed the soil at that point.
Yeah, it was a little different.
So is it recommended then that we wait till construction happens at Roosevelt Park to then enact decontamination? Or is it that being proactive, knowing that there's already lead across the entirety of the field, that we do what the city council voted for last year, which was to go 3 feet down the entirety of the park? Proactive or reactive?
At this point, right, there is no plan for that park other than addressing this imminent hazard area. The additional 3 feet to go, that was a council vote, was not necessary to go down the additional feet, in the opinion of the technical expert, Jim Parker. So right now, to go down 3 feet with no plan, it seems kind of pointless at this point.
Okay. And I'm sorry, one last final thing. There was a lead notice put out about 5 years ago to the Salem Woods School community saying that there was lead in that hazardous part of the field. Would you be able to resubmit that to all the parents and students and translate it into the 7 various languages? Just so that every year, so that we parents are aware that there's lead on that field. It's only been once put out, so.
Well, I could just point out that, so as we're going to prepare a RAM plan to talk about doing that, okay, the notices will go out to everybody in the PIP list. There'll be a notice in the paper. Okay. And I believe we'll do the same thing we did last time, but I believe a thing went out through the school in multiple languages. And so, okay, and in that draft document, it will describe the history or why we're doing it and what's okay there. So it'll give that information. Okay. Just to.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's very helpful. Thank you, everyone.
Can I go? Hi, my name is Ileana Rivera, 14 Bowdoin Street. I am here as a concerned parent from the Salem Wood. My daughter's right there. She plays sports as well. More of a comment than a question. This is a very conflicting situation for me personally because my daughter does play sports. And I actually did not know about the Roosevelt Park situation until I got a letter, I believe in the mail, about 5 years ago about the lead. Then we saw the fence put up. I would like for this project to come out very positive, bring all the groups that are opposed against each other to come together and really put the children and the residents first and not their personal opinions. I appreciate you, Ari, for bringing all the facts to the table and being so transparent. And also, I'm very patient with you as you are learning as we are all learning, right? I keep hearing a lot about the fence needs to come down, the fence is gonna come down. Technically, yes, the fence will come down, but it's gonna go back up because are we gonna even be able to allow children to play on that area when you guys dig up? I mean, from what I see, Kirsten Park is still fenced up because the grass is growing, right? The grass is settling. So for me, it's like, yeah, you guys are gonna clean the area, but that fence is gonna go back up for how long? You know, yes, we're gonna eliminate the lead or fix whatever as much as we can, but the children really are not gonna be able to play in that area still.
I can maybe speak to that.
Okay.
So are you saying that after it's done, they'll have to keep people off of it to allow the turf to regrow?
Yes, it's,
Yeah, I mean, that is a process. You will have to wait for that. I mean, a big portion of this is skinned infield, so obviously you don't need to wait on that. But the grass, you'll need to wait till it recovers to the point where they can it'll take a wearing. So there will be a time period, I would imagine. That's really got nothing to do with the remediation part of it, but just from a use standpoint.
just in general, yeah.
And I don't know how long that would be. I would think like at least the growing season. I don't know.
So if you guys do it over the summer, this stuff like this takes time, but it's not gonna be ready for next fall for the kids to be able to play on there. So my thing is, when you guys fix this area, how long are you guys gonna give in between to start making another plan for the rest of the park? And to fix the foundation of the area around the school where the children are falling and hurting themselves almost every single day. My daughter comes home every day telling me that someone hurt themselves because of there's so many cracks. So for me, like, yeah, kids are falling every day. I would like for that foundation to be fixed and the cracks to be fixed and the lead to be removed. But which one is gonna come first? And I know someone spoke about it, but it's just me saying my concern, like mostly about that. I'm not sure if I'm making myself very clear. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous.
I think you are.
Yeah, Eliana, I think you're fine. So kind of all of these things are happening at once, and that kind of leads to one of the reasons that it takes sometimes more time than we want to get answers is because we're doing multiple things at once. I'm trying to look at how everything plays in together, and there's, a lot that goes into that. Does it need to remediate the drainage right now to be able to then fix the building so that it doesn't continuously happen? And I think, like Ron said, that is something that we're looking into. I don't know how long those plans take. I mean, with any construction project, with anything like that, anybody who's done home construction, you have the best laid plans, and then weather events happen or cost hikes or, whatever, it just doesn't work with the school year calendar or something. So we are working on them, and there will be more information on that, and I will definitely get it out to you in the PTO, Principal Van, and to all the other stakeholders of the school, as well as the neighborhood, as soon as I have that information. I do just want to let everybody know that this is getting worked on daily. I am in contact with most of the folks up here on a fairly regular basis, weekly, if not, more so in this building, trying to get that information. And it's stuff that everybody is working on together. I don't know if that answers. I know that's not really a timeline, and I'm sorry I can't give you one, but that's.
Yeah, I think that's like what I think everyone is wondering, the timeline, but there's no plan.
There's not a plan. We are putting things together to be able, it's just there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. If we fix the drainage in this area, will that affect the neighbors? Will that flood this area? Will that, hurt the building? If we reconstruct this, how does that, there's a lot of cause and effect, and there's a lot of professionals. I have never done professional planning or engineering. I have no background in that. So there's a lot of getting that information from the professionals and looking in and bringing up ideas. What will work? What can we do? what is new that has just been released as far as products that might help us? How does it work with our climate action plan? So there's a lot of checks and balances that go into it, and we are going through that process. We are doing this right now, so I do hope to have a plan, you know, sooner rather than later. I'd love to see something happen. I know, you know, one thing we heard huge last year was that the kids really want a basketball court, not a basketball field. You can tell I don't play sports. Basketball court, and that's something that I'd love to be able to provide for that school. That's something I'd like to see how we can do that. So we're looking into those options, and then with that comes what kind of funding can we get just for our basketball? What kind of funding? Does it make sense to just put that up, or are we going to have to re-dig it up to do something else? So there really is a lot of time and intent and serious consideration and care for the neighborhood and the kids. I think I want to reiterate that this is the neighborhood I grew up in, and this is the park that was my home park. So I have a deep care and respect for this park. My memories go back to when I was first born. I want to see good things for it, and I want to see good things for the neighborhood kids, my 3 kids, who are 3 of them. So, and for everybody to be able to enjoy it. I have a dream of having 4th of July back there at some point, like it was when I grew up. But we need to work together, and we are doing that, and we are building plans, and we are putting it all together. It just unfortunately is going to take time.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Laura Thompson. I'm at 53 Plaisted Road. I'm an adjacent neighbor to this park, and I've lived here since 2002. So I've raised kids. They played in the park. We love the park. We love the community. It's everything to me. I'm pretty emotional about this because people ask me about the park, and I always say, all I want to see is a park renovated. That's all I want to see. I would just love to see. I look around and I see all these beautiful renovations happening at Kierstead when I'm walking to my gym. I see all these beautiful renovations happening, like at Dever. They were just talking about it at the city council meeting, and it was just wonderful. It's just like they can have natural grass and they can have sporting events going on there. So it's like, well, that's the dream. That's the dream for everyone, right? And it's just like, I don't want to talk about the past that much anymore. I just want to get this project moving forward. We have money that we can reappropriate to this. We have the resources here, the brain trust that can get this done. So why can't we do that? I think we should start with drainage. I think drainage in so many areas of the city is a huge problem that's been overlooked. And I think if we get drainage right, it would be good for the school, for our students. I see the kids playing out there every day in the park, and I see the concrete that you guys are talking about, that's a mess. And, you know, I know maybe our area is not the most glamorous or whatever, but that love that people talk about Dever and about those areas, I have the exact same feeling about my park. I have the exact same feeling about my school and the kids that play there. So all I want is to get it done. That's all I want. Whatever we can do, whatever it takes to make that happen, tell me, and I will do it.
So I will just say that's exactly what we're trying to do. But there's a new project. There needs to be new information, and we're putting together a whole new plan. I want nothing more than to see that. That has always been, as I just said.
And I want you to tell you, I'm not against sports. My kids played sports. We can make that happen. You know, we can work together. We don't need to be divided on these issues. We can all be here. We're all Moldonians, right? This is our town.
But we need to get to a point where there is a trust and we are talking together, and there is.
That's why we have to have community meetings.
And that is why we're having this meeting today. As soon as we got the information, it takes time out of everybody's schedule It takes.
Mine too.
Yeah, yeah, and I understand that, and we are trying
just
to all
came from work,
work together, and we are trying to put forth what we can do going forward. We are all working on this together. We have several people here
So in
tonight,
order to build trust, we need to see something.
and that's what I'm working on.
On a more regular basis than every few months.
And I am absolutely working on that. You can go to the Ward 5 website, which I have put up, and I keep it updated with city council meetings. I keep it updated with the Roosevelt Park project. I
need to
keep it
see-
updated with craft fairs. There's events. There's all the other things that is going on. We are having this stuff. I am updating as much as I possibly can. If you notice, when you send an email, I am responsive within
It's okay.
a matter of
I
time.
understand.
We are all working together, and this is the goal, to get to a place that the
But I
city
just
and
want
the
you to understand,
constituents
I
can
want
enjoy.
everybody to understand, this is my home.
It is my home too.
But that park is my home. I live right next to it.
I
And what
understand.
happens in that park affects me and my adjacent neighbors and the children of the park.
Which is why we
So
are doing the
need to
due
know-
diligence to make sure that we do this and do this right. And we, as soon as I have updates, this is why we put together an event like this. When we have the updates, when everybody can, we will get the information out. It's not a matter of trying to hide it. It's not a matter of
I
trying.
never said it was a matter of
I'm
trying
not,
to-
I'm
and
not,
I don't
okay,
wanna
you know what,
get
this is,
into-
I think this is getting off topic and we can talk offline about anything else. I don't want to go into the back and
Okay.
forth. I do just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. If anybody else has questions or comments, feel free. We'll
Okay.
go from there.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Sullivan. I live at 27 Oliver Street. I was a teacher at the Salem Wood School and has been fighting against this since 2009. And during those times, there were no voices for the kids. You got to understand, that is the poorest school in our city. Most of those kids and their parents don't speak English. They're working 2, 3, 4 jobs. They don't understand when you send something home, and half of the stuff doesn't get home to them anyways. And if you're a parent, you understand that those notices. We didn't do enough to bring the problem to the parents. We didn't. Those parents deserve, just like every one of you up there that has children, you deserve to know and be kept up to date that the field that your child is playing on every day has lead in it. Do you understand that? I remember as a teacher, the kids digging in that soil that you said that there was less than 18 inches was lead. Because that's what kids do, right? They run out, they grab a stick, they dig. Okay, I appreciate that all of you are here tonight. I really do. And all we want to do is move forward. We're not a bad group of people. We just wanted people to be heard, the neighbors to be heard, the students, the families to be heard. We're not doing anything bad. We're speaking up. We're being residents, being taxpayers, being teachers who take care of your children every day. You don't understand. I have one question. Have we put aside the plan for artificial plastic turf there? Okay. I hope we can move forward quickly.
The previous plan has been completely taken
Yes,
off
but
the table.
I
The
just wanna
previous
know-
plan in its fullness has been completely taken off the table, and a new plan needs to be
Which will
put together, which we are working on, which we are trying to put the pieces together. I have said from the beginning, as I said earlier tonight, my goal is to ensure that we have kids playing soccer on grass.
That's fine, as long as it's going to be grass. It needs to
That
be
is-
natural grass. As a science teacher, I can tell you, a lot of my lessons were out on that field, teaching kids about photosynthesis, teaching them about roots, teaching about the bugs and we used to see a lot of butterflies and birds and hawks. Those won't be there if you put plastic grass there.
We are working on the next phase. Right now, we're working on the remediation.
Okay,
And we
so-
do hear you and we do understand you. And we are moving forward.
Okay, and all I can ask is that these parents and all the parents that go into the Salem Wood School are kept up to date on it every couple of months, every 6 months.
I have kept up to date with the school principal and the PTO as often as possible to make sure that that happens. I agree, and we are working to do that.
So that they understand at the PTO
Yep.
meetings, and they are sent home notices.
We have one.
And it goes on social media.
We do have, and I do keep up as much as I can with my social media, as much as I can with the Ward 5 website. Alex keeps up on the Roosevelt project online, so there is multiple places that is going up and going out.
It is frustrating that all that opera money was available and let it sit there, and you could have done it with that money. That's very frustrating. So I hope we can move forward and work together.
That is the goal.
This is not about being against sports. It's really not.
I do have somebody online that I would like to make sure, because we are rounding up to just after 6:30, to make sure that we do get everybody in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Eliana, before you, I am going to go to the person who has their hand raised online. I don't know how to do that. Good. I can only handle. This one's tough enough.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead. Just if you can state your name and address for the record, that would be great.
Hey, Jonathan Beckmeyer, 67 Ashland Street, Malden. Ari, thank you for putting this together. I think it's a start of something good where everyone can listen to all the appropriate people involved. I think, obviously, like you mentioned, there is a lot of mistrust. And what I'm hearing is a lot of frustration. And I guess those two go hand in hand, which is understandable. But I'm also, I'm still personally a little confused as to what the plan going forward is. What are the priorities here? Is the priority getting rid of the lead? And if so, in my opinion, should be the first priority. What are we doing? Are we going down 1.5 feet? Are we going down 3 feet in that fenced in area so that that can be remediated right away? That makes most sense, common sense to me right away. But I haven't heard anybody say, yes, that's what we're doing. And it sounds like we're making a plan to that, but let's do it. Thank you.
Hi, Jonathan. The materials that the mayor's office put out with the various attachments that are posted online indicated that we're going with the recommendation of our LSP to go down 1.5 feet of, remove 1.5 feet of soil, put in a geotextile barrier, and refill it with clean fill within the fenced-in area.
Okay. I'll go to the podium if you can state your name and address again for the record.
Ileana, again, 14 Bowden Street. So earlier I spoke as a concerned parent. I'm here again to speak on behalf of the PTO of the Salem Wood. I am the president, and Annabeth is one of the chairpersons. I feel that I have to speak on this just because I have to put it out there. Whatever happened in the past, happened in the past. If people got notices, didn't get notices, we as a PTO are very split, grass, turf, for many reasons, sports and all that stuff. We have come to an agreement that we will share any type of factual update. And Ari, we spoke about this, but I just want to open for everyone else in the public that we will share anything on our PTO page. We will continue on talking to parents about meetings. But we as a PTO have decided that we will not speak about anything else, like politics or anything. We are here as parents tonight. But whatever information that you want us to give out to our parents, that is facts about when you're gonna take down the fence, who they can speak to, what website, et cetera. We are more than happy to share that. And we are also working with other groups in Malden as well. And we will continue on sharing that information. But we are kind of like just unbiased. And I just wanted to say that to the public, just because I've heard a couple of times the PTO, yes, our job is to raise money for the school for their field trips. And we care about our school very much. We just want something to happen in place. And that's what you're doing. And I appreciate that, Ari. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Alex, and then Councilor McDonald has. Oh, I have to turn, sorry. Oh, and you're sitting in his seat. There you go.
Thank you. And just wanted to say thank you to the PTO for being a resource for us. We care a lot about trying to get the word out. So as we move forward with the PIT process, which is that public involvement process, as we get further along, we will reach out and ask for your help in getting the word out. We know that in Malden, people get information a ton of different ways. A lot of it is word of mouth. So if we try to do it like a fire hose, then maybe you get it a trickle. So we're going to try that, and you're going to be part of that process. And we understand and appreciate that the PTO has folks on different sides of this issue, and just appreciate the idea that I think a lot of folks have said, let's get this remediation done. I think that's something that we all have consensus on.
Hello, Carrie McDonald, City Councilor at Large, 33 Pierce Street, which is quite close to the park. And I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the spirit, both that you have convened this, Councilor Taylor, my ward councilor, and like just the willingness that I hear from the parents and the advocates in this room. I feel it reflected for those of you online, but maybe that's just me. And that gives me some hope, because I think this has just been a really tough issue for some time. And I just want to make a process. So I wanted to just appreciate that, and then just make a process point that going forward, I think that there are trade-offs in the process about how we'll make decisions about this park. The more we want to do, the more planning that takes more time, more money, the more we want to have not just a regular level of community involvement, but extensive community involvement. That does take time and money, and it changes the timeline of projects. The more we can build consensus, the quicker we can move with different things. Mistrust takes a lot of time to deal with. So moving at the speed of trust is often the right way to go. But I just want to note that sometimes you can't build trust until you actually go through the thing. And that's what I hope that this is starting to do here. But I just want, as folks think about what it's actually going to take to move forward with the wider project, I don't know what consensus or relative consensus is possible, but the consultant time, the time in each of your schedules, our time, all of that actually requires investment that I think the city is prepared to make. We're following your lead, Councilor Taylor, but there are different levels to that based on the extensive community engagement we've already had. If there are ways to leverage that, to move forward more quickly with this project, if we were to start from scratch, the Dever Park projects has taken, that was three years at this point ago that started, and we're still getting to 4 years. We're getting to phase 2. So these do take time. So I just want folks, as we're thinking about urgency here, to be thinking about where is consensus possible, which would allow us to move quickly, and where is it going to just take more time for conversation, because that will take more time and more trade-offs. And that's just real. And so thank you, everybody, for being here. I just want to make that point.
Thank you.
And I have to go to another meeting. Sorry.
Anybody online?
I don't think there's.
Rick Berliner, 52 Glen. Just a quick factual question. The infield is going back in with the clay and the bases and all that stuff, and yes, that's what's going on top?
Yeah, it's going to be restored to what it was, match existing grade.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't do your mic. Sorry. I really missed you. Okay. Do you want to say that again, just so it's on?
Sure.
Sorry.
Yes, to answer your question, it's just going to be restored to what it was. So clay infield and skin infield, and then the grass around the field.
Okay. Thank you.
Do I have to say my name and street again?
Yeah.
Okay. Annabeth Donchemont, 16 Preston Street. So I am, as many of you know, I am born and raised in Malden. I've been here since I was a kid. I played softball on Salem Wood my entire life. My favorite memory was always being on one field and having my best friend on the other and being able to see both games. Both my brothers were Salem Wood students. My aunt taught at Salem Wood. Salem Wood has always been a very deep place in my heart, especially now that my son is there and I'm part of different groups that are involved in there, both soccer and baseball and everything else. I really do hope, though, that with the future planning that happens with this project, I know that there are some that have really strong opinions one way or the other, but I really do hope we don't completely close the door to turf. And I do hope that we at least envision or visit both issues. I do know that there is actually still a great population at Salem Wood that is hoping that we do have turf, especially with a lot of the issues that this field has had for the past my entire life. So I do just want to let you guys know, and I know there's a population that speaks and talks all about that's grass is it, and I'm not saying it's not. Grass is a great option, but I don't want to completely shut the door to looking into turf as well. And I do just want to say that there are Salem Wood parents that do also want to just have that door open, at least to see what that viable option could be. I don't want us to think that Salem Wood's completely against turf, because not all parents at Salem Wood are. So just want to say that. And thank you really for connecting with the community and keeping us engaged. And I think you do a wonderful job at connecting with the community and being like one of the best counselors that does a really good job with this project of reaching out to everyone.
You want to check online first, or?
I don't see any, you don't see it. We're good. We're good.
John Saya, 37 Pierce Street in Malden, Mass. The only other thing I was going to add is that I believe with the CPC money, it was said in the past that it was attached to a feature for an outdoor classroom. So that being the case, I would just recommend, I don't understand why the city couldn't have started the CPC project sooner, because they could be discussing the outdoor classroom. Otherwise, that money wouldn't be eligible, accessible for the project until the outreach and the discussion of the outdoor classroom takes place as well at the same time. And is that true, or do you have any comments on that?
Oh, I have to put your, sorry. Alex, okay, give it to Alex.
The outdoor classroom was a part of the overall project. And with that project being canceled and us trying to figure out the remediation as our next step, that's kind of the status of it.
Right, so would that mean that the CPC money that's currently set aside couldn't be reauthorized unless the outdoor classroom were also incorporated in the future use?
If I'm understanding our treasurer right, maybe we want to hear from him directly.
Yeah, so
there has
with
to be a process for that.
Yep, with the initial project being canceled, the appropriation would have to be reappropriated. You'd have to get a request sent down by the mayor for a particular project. That would be in conjunction with some conversations with the CPC. And then it would have to go down to the city council for approval from there. And to Alex's point, this was a holistic project. It wasn't just piecemeal to do an outdoor classroom and then part of a field. And so it wouldn't have been viable to bifurcate those.
Okay, so if the city wanted to just use that money for the current remediation, it could do so even without including the outdoor classroom feature? Is that?
Whatever is done with the funds that have been previously appropriated, an order will have to come down from the mayor to then be reappropriated by the city council. So in theory, any one of these could be reappropriated, or some other funding source could be brought up to then be utilized for soil remediation. So I don't know if that answers the question that
I was just wondering if the city wanted to use that money, that they would have to incorporate the outdoor classroom feature as well.
That would not be a requirement because
okay.
there would be a reappropriation, which would be a change to the original authorization.
Completely, okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Nobody online? Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for being here, for having this conversation, for starting this conversation. I look forward to more conversations as we get more information. I think everybody knows how to reach me, and happy to get answers for you. Generally, I think Maria will tell you, and some of the folks here, they see me in this building at least twice a week where I can easily get answers and try and talk to folks to get the information back to you as soon as possible. We will continue to do that. I want to thank, again, everybody here for their time tonight, both in the audience at home and up on the panel. And have a good night.